My story starts 18 years ago, and I look exactly the same, admit it, as a young undergraduate at a large state university, and I was interested in dissent and protest, and a couple of friends and I put on a march. It was that first Gulf War, I think it was called Operation Desert Storm. Remember that one? And it was a complete failure. We had failed to engage our generation. We based it on what we had known before, which is a bunch of people marching down the mall. And I remember looking behind me and no one was there. So I looked up what protest was, and my idea was, how can design engage and work hand in hand with the next generation to try to raise some hell? So I looked up protest, and I found this in Wikipedia, and I want you to remember this. There's a quiz at the end. But most importantly, I want you to look at how protest is defined as publicly and forcefully. So keep that in mind as I go through this. So if we look at the history of protest, about every 30 years, things change drastically. So nonviolent protest in the 30s was significant in that Gandhi made that really long walk and people followed. And then 30 years later, things got a little bit more creative with the civil rights movement, and people were introducing the idea of sit-ins as more mainstream ideas of protest. 30 years later after that, we got really Frankie Goes to Hollywood and started doing more theatrical types of protest. And so here we are about 20 years later, and we're working with a whole new generation, a whole new paradigm of young people. The Millennials. And if you look closely at the Millennials, they have a whole new set of characteristics. They're positive and participatory, and they work together. They have a respect for law and authority, yet feel entitled. They are everything that I am not, is the idea here. And so how could I work with them to try to do something that was using their nuances, yet teaching them about being public and forceful? I also looked at design's role in the last 10 years, and what I found is it was following a similar trend in that design was moving more toward where designers would introduce something that allowed other people to design. And so instead of designer knew best, which is what it was 10 years ago, we're moving more into the idea of letting other people design for themselves as the role of the designer. So how could I take these things and put them together? Well, at the time, I was a graduate student at California College of the Arts, and this is Hooper Street. It's adjacent and runs right between the two buildings at California College of the Arts. There are 3 transient populations that frequent this street, and the one thing that those 3 populations had in common was this lead-infested soil. This used to be the Greyhound maintenance station. So how could I use this prime piece of land, along with these nuances that I talked about, in creating a new idea or a new paradigm with design, the new generation, and the idea of dissent or protest? So I founded a group, and this group would take this land and other underutilized land, make it productive for the expressed meaning of creating community. And so how could I tie these 3 populations, these 3 transient populations together? So using design and that technology thing that the Millennials really love, somebody helped me program a poster that would make itself. So every 24 hours, a new poster would appear. This is a 24-hour scene where the students at CCA could text or go to the web and answer a series of questions on food justice, around food justice on that street. And depending on what their answers were, their answers would appear so they could be heard and entitled, and it would form its own poster so they could design it themselves. And so this is on the web, and they could text to it. And then I went and projected that 15 feet wide on the side of California College of the Arts, right next to Hooper Street, which was this stumpy little 10-foot wide by a quarter-mile long piece of land. I also used a more analog way of promoting this event where the poster formed itself on an analog level. So instead of being the designer knows best and telling them to come to this event, I asked them what they wanted to do with Hooper Street. And they students at CCA love to write on the walls, so this was perfect. And I asked them what they wanted to do, and they spent all week filling it in. They wanted swimming pools and more parking, and they wanted a garden, too, and so we had an interest meeting, and the parking people didn't show up, so we made a garden. So we had a big day. Over 50 students, community members, and day laborers showed up to build this garden on Hooper Street to transform this area. We got a lot of advice on how to remove the toxins. By the way, I have no idea about agriculture at all. So we all got together, we used a permaculture technique, and we went and built the farm. I looked at that definition, this is the quiz part, on protest, and I decided that since we were working with the millennials and we were entitled, that we would just go into Wikipedia and change just one little word. And by doing that, we made F.A.R.M the definition of protest. And so we found our new way of protesting, one that maybe matched this next generation a little bit more closely. I also decided that one little dinky farm that was 10 foot wide by a quarter-mile long wasn't really going to do maybe a whole lot. But if we had 1,000 farms, what would that do in all these little spaces in a city? So I wrote our story. It's a 56-page tabloid that it explains how to make your own farm. And found myself back in Sacramento. Here's one part of the story, and this is one of our millennial farmers. And we made a F.A.R.M Davis. And so F.A.R.M Davis, which is on 8th and K Street, since we started on Halloween, which I thought was appropriate for the millennials, but we've already donated, since we had our first harvest in January, and we've donated over 100 pounds of food to a homeless group over on Olive Drive. A woman there teaches them how to cook with the food. Now, the other half we ate, which is part of the F.A.R.M philosophy, so half of it goes to low-income and homeless groups to feed them, and the other half we eat. It runs completely on a gift economy. We have a budget of 0. And so everything we get, we plant, and we've gotten everything for free: seeds, fertilizer, horse manure. I learned all kinds of new things about lots of things. And the space is on a privately owned front yard. So we're working with 1,600 square feet is all. And so we have these PhD ag students who are working on the farm and growing food, and most of them don't even want to eat it. I have to force them home with it, like the Jewish mother I am. And then we went and built, and this is coming in May, we just got some land over where Tent City was last summer. I don't know if you remember that. So the man who owns the land there donated use of the land at 13th and C Street to start the Sacramento farm, and so we'll be doing the same thing in Sacramento. So it's exciting. I'm hoping there's 1,000. I made 1,000 of those tabloids, but we're up to number 3, and I'm excited about that. It's been a year and a month, and I figure if every 7 months we can make a new farm, that we might be going in the right direction. Thank you.